Hello folks, how's everybody doing? Hope you're doing fine. Hope you're getting ready for Christmas, New Year's. Okay, today we have a busy schedule, so I'm going to see if I can answer some questions at the end, but don't count on it. I'm going to try to do my best here to whiz through this. Anyways, I am going to start with a couple comments made by one visitor, okay? And puts the subject of today in some kind of perspective. Okay, so here we go. This individual accuses me, right? Who says, anyone who says they can predict the future, the far future, I think is deluding themselves. Totally agree. I don't know where he got that with that. I guess he's suggesting that I'm predicting the future? No. Again, people get very mixed up with the issue of extinction, okay? And I clarified it a couple times, but this guy apparently did not catch it. And so I'll say it one more time. What we're explaining is the mechanism of a mass extinction. In other words, we're explaining how the animals in the past disappeared. We're explaining the mechanism. And I'm saying that they fell or disappeared when their ecological pyramid overturned. And what I'm saying is that man cannot avoid that same mechanism. Okay? You got that right? Okay, so there's nothing about prediction here. We're not saying that humans are going to die the 1st of May of 2030. That's not what we're saying here. That's religion. That's astrology. I don't do astrology. Sorry. No predictions. He says, on how we may be able to feed 10 billion people, and he gives a reference, right? And I don't know where he got that either. Again, this individual is not paying attention. We can feed 10 billion people. We can feed 11. We can feed 15 billion people, maybe even 20 or more. Capitalism is a very efficient system. You know, you got to do something for yourself, and you go out there and fill in a niche in the economy, and yeah, you can make a big buck, and that allows the economy to progress. Okay, so no, he's got this wrong. I'm not saying that we can't feed 10 billion or we can't feed 15 billion or 20 billion. This is not a Malthusian type of theory. This theory has to do with something else, that when, not if, but when the economy collapses, the global economy collapses. What do I mean by that? I mean money is no more. You will not accept money anymore. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Money will collapse. We won't believe in money anymore. In God we trust, we don't trust him anymore. We become atheists in money. When that happens, no one has incentive to produce food, not for 10 billion, for you, for one person. No one will produce or distribute it to the cities. Okay, that's the argument. Get the argument straight. Okay, right now people are having trouble understanding what I'm trying to say here. But I took issue with the last one. The reference below contradicts Bill's statement that disease has never wiped out a species, and he gives that reference there. Okay, so what do I have to say about that? Well, first of all, this is what this individual is referring to. There was this enormous rat, on Christmas Island near Australia in the Indian Ocean. And it was colonized in 1888 by the United Kingdom. About a year or sometime earlier before that, some people went there and they found this rat. Okay, they analyzed it. By 1899, about 10, 11 years later, a ship came over there and to mine phosphate. And what they found is that, and what happened was there were some stowaway rats, black rats, the ones that bring the diseases to all parts of the world, like the bubonic plague. And these rats brought sleeping sickness. Okay, and so apparently the sleeping sickness, according to some, spread throughout the island among the endemic rats, like this one here, right? And it's known as McCleary. And what happened was that within a few years, apparently they were all gone. There was this fellow Durham. He collects some in the period of 1901, 1902, when he visited the island. And those were the rats that we still have today in museums. There's a museum over there on the island. He collected them, he donated it to the museum, and these rats were infected with that disease. Okay, so so that's our starting point. Okay, the starting point is there's this rat. Apparently, according to a paper that I'm going to show in a second, they died of disease. This disease brought by the black rats, and within a few years they were all gone. Okay, that's the theory. Okay, now this fellow didn't do any research. He just took authority and just regurgitated it and said, see, disease has killed species in the past. Okay, that's his argument. And so here's the paper. Here's the original paper. Sorry, wrong one. Here it is. Here's the original paper, and by Wyatt and et al., right, the company, the group of people who analyzed some of these rats. And the first thing that you see is that they're not as sure as this other individual who put the comment. This absence of evidence cannot be considered decisive given the few samples available for analysis. That's the first thing we have to put in the proper context. What these researchers did, they went to the museum in Christmas Island, and they got a hold of about, I think, 18 samples, and they analyzed them. Some of them, most of them, had the disease. They did some genetic analysis. They found that some of them, again, most of them had the disease. Now that's not surprising, because this fellow who donated them, he didn't go out there into the jungle to pick up live rats. What he did, he picked up the dead rats that died of the disease. So, you know, there was a selective collection there. You know, they collected dead rats, not live rats, and eventually he donated them to the museum. These are the rats that this group in 2008 analyzes and says, yeah, the rats apparently died of disease. Okay. What's the problem? Well, we got a couple of problems with that. The first one is they mention in passing hybridization, that there is a possibility that the black rat, which is that rattus there, our rattus, that they probably mated with the McCleary, and that's how the other rats, the McClearys, disappeared. They essentially became a new species. Okay, that's one argument. Okay. Personally, I don't believe in that one either, just like these folks, but I'm just saying that there's other theories out there. The other issue is that, you know, you have the island shrew, and it was alive all the way to 1985, many years later, many decades later. And the question, why did the island shrew catch the flu, right? And there's other animals like there's a pipistrelle, a small bat, also presumed to be extinct in this day and age. There is a flying fox, apparently the last native mammal. Okay, and so the question is, what happened to all the other animals? Did they die because of this flu as well? And the flying fox has other problems, has low rate of reproduction and high infant mortality. Okay. So we got a problem because there are other theories out there. In fact, I have a different theory for these types of problems. See if I can find it here. Yeah. Here's a hint of what I consider an old species. Okay, a species which is about to die no matter what you do, whether it's endangered or not. And these are the clues Mother Nature gives as far as I'm concerned, okay? Reproduction, low fertility, okay? That's a sign of an old species. Longevity, lives a long life. That's a sign of an old species. Sedentary, doesn't colonize the land anymore, doesn't migrate. That's another sign. Disease resistant to the endemic diseases in their region. You know, if they don't move around, they eventually become immune to a great extent to the diseases that plagued them throughout the centuries. They're usually big. This rat was big. Numerous. This rat was numerous on that island. Obviously, it wasn't colonizing any other place. They were stuck on that island. Genetic diversity low. We don't know about these rats. Nobody did a genetic diversity analysis on them, so I have no data on that. And it resembles, some of those examples I give there. The passenger pigeon, great auk, dodo bird, the moa bird, which was some kind of ostrich, Tasmanian tiger, Pyrenean ibex, and so on. These are old species. They're about to die anyways, okay? And so, in fact, you have the Tasmanian tiger, and you have today the Tasmanian devil, which is still alive. They were right? Carnivorous marsupials. That's a dinosaur. There's no such thing. I mean, these animals have outlived their species lifespan almost. They had to die because they were at the end of the line after millions of years of evolving and who knows what. So my take on that is that certain animals, simply have lived too long. They're an old species. We're one of them. We fit almost all those criteria. Okay, we have low reproduction now. Okay, in general, on the average, right? Longevity. We are among the mammals that live the longest lives. We are sedentary. We no longer colonize anything. The whole planet is colonized. We are disease resistant. We don't die of disease anymore. A contagious disease, except if there's a new one coming out, Ebola or something that just pops out and comes into the world of the civilized world. But the old diseases like smallpox and so on, they've been eradicated. We don't die of those things anymore. So we're disease resistant to a great extent. We die of genetic diseases, like diabetes and cancer. We don't die of contagious diseases anymore, not massively. Okay, size, we're big. We're among the biggest. There you see the little drawing on the bottom. The famous evolution little drawing. Okay, we're big for our for monkeys. Okay, and we have low genetic diversity. So we fit all those criteria. By the way, we are an old species. And people say, Bill, you're crazy. What do you mean we're an old species? We've only been around maybe, 200,000 years? That's what the official version is. Mother Nature does not, according to me, right, does not judge how old a species is by how many times the Earth went around the sun. No, the way she judges is by all those criteria. Whether you're big, whether you lost your genetic diversity, whether you're numerous, whether you are sedentary and conquered all endemic diseases, etc., etc., etc. Okay? So we are an old species. We are about to die, no matter what. And I'm saying we're not going to die of any of that. We're going to die for a different reason altogether, which is, the thing we cannot overcome, which is the same thing the animals in the past could not overcome, which is the pyramid overturning of the ecological pyramid. But getting back to this article, here was an article that came 4 years later. And again, it shows you why you have to be careful with what you read out there. You got to be skeptical of everything you read. Wyatt is the first group that published their report in 2008, and here's an answer to that. They say that what Wyatt provided was circumstantial evidence, okay? And there's no direct evidence, okay? And again, when you study samples 100 years old out of a museum, a very small sample, you can't draw global conclusions from that. You can have a theory and say they died of disease, that's okay, but when you try to impose that theory on other people, you're not doing science, you're doing religion, okay? You're doing politics. But I like that last statement that this fellow said, says, attributing prehistoric extinctions to infectious disease has become almost a cottage industry in the last 2 decades. Again, you got to be extremely careful with what you read because theorists like to impose their theory upon you. It's a normal human behavior. So Nothing wrong with that. Just you should be able to separate science from religion, from politics. And it's interesting that they, in that paper, they mentioned low genetic diversity of the Tasmanian devil. I mean, for all we know, the McCleary died of low genetic diversity. You know, maybe they were on their way out. Anyways, again, they were numerous, they were big, maybe they had no genetic diversity. You know, there could be other reasons why they died, or other factors that took them to their extinction. And they weren't the only animals that died, by the way, and not all of them died of the disease. And then there was another paper earlier in 1996, and these people vouched for hybridization. So again, what this does is show you that other people don't agree with disease, that the disease killed the rats. There are different opinions out there, and we don't care about the opinions, we care about the mechanism. This guy says hybridization, this other guy says disease. So far we're talking science. That's okay. It's when you say, mine is the truth, you should believe my theory, that's when we have a problem. And again, this fellow, I don't know, well, he likes authority, apparently. First paper he read said, oh yeah, I know, here's disease, you know. No, we have no evidence that any species ever on planet Earth died of disease, okay? And they've been trying to prove that for the last 20, 30 years, and they haven't been able at least to convince, I mean, proof is not part of science, but they weren't able to convince their colleagues. People don't buy into this disease extinction theory, okay? They say, okay, that's your opinion, that's fine, but we don't buy into it. Okay, so what do I really want to talk about today? Well, I've got the free willies and Anarcho-Caps, the people who believe in free will, and people who believe in Anarcho-Capitalists who believe we should take government off our backs. We have too much government. Government only interferes with you know, regular trade, and so we got to get rid of them. And so these people never buy into my extinction theory because it's based on economics, and boy, all these people are experts in economics, okay? They're experts. You can't put anything through them because they know it all by heart. Now, I criticize them because they don't know anything about extinction. And what I'm talking about is extinction. And they say, well, you're talking about animals. Yeah, because that's all that's become extinct, together with plants, by the way, in the past. You know, we humans, we haven't become extinct so far, you know. And so they say, well, you're talking about animals, but we're not animals. And you say, Bill, you're putting words in our mouths. No, I'm not. You know, I say, look, you got to study, you got to put a comment here, which nobody has so far, after the third episode here on extinction. No one has put a comment talking about how the animals in the past died. Everybody just wants to talk about man. Everybody's an expert on man. No one's an expert on extinction. And so when I say, look, you got to study extinction first, the extinction of the animals, so that you can project whatever killed them to man and find out if man can avoid that same process. Whatever happened to them, can we avoid it? With all our intelligence, all our technology, all our smartness and foresight and whatever, can we avoid the same mechanism that claimed the lives of these species in the past? And they say, well, it's irrelevant. Why is it irrelevant? It's irrelevant because we're not animals. That's essentially their argument. Okay, and so unfortunately I got to establish that we are animals. You say, Bill, that's overkill. No, it's not, because we can't use the word animal in two different ways in science. We can't use the word animal in biology and say, well, we know what an animal is biologically, but then, you know, move on and say, well, but we're not going to use that definition for economics or for extinction. That's where we have a problem. Right now we're having a big problem with the word animal. People don't know what an animal is, and they don't know whether humans are animals or not. So I'm going to establish that here. It's you know, laying the foundation for extinction. I didn't think I needed to do this, but yeah, I do need to establish that humans are animals and belong to the animal kingdom. Maybe the Anarcho-Caps and the free willies, maybe they believe they're rocks or plants, I don't know. So I'm going to establish it. Sorry, I need to do this because these people don't believe it. So here's their argument essentially, okay? They say we're not animals. So we have to look at the definition of animal. What is an animal? Okay, I mean, if we're going to talk about extinction of animals, we better know what an animal is. And here we find a definition, okay? It says animals are multicellular, eukaryotic organisms. Eukaryotes are organisms whose cells have nucleus enclosed within membranes, okay? Now, if you fit that description, you're an animal. Now, if you have a different definition, you know, you should start there. You should start with your definition, okay? And so where do humans fit in with this definition? I mean, within the world of animals, if we're animals, right? And this is the classification we have today. We have, we belong to the kingdom of Animalia, okay? We're animals. We are mammals. We are hominids. And we are hominins, okay? What are these categories? Okay, real quick, so we go through them. You can always challenge them later, okay? What are these categories? Well, mammals says that we are breastfeeders. Essentially, that's what it is. Mammary glands, that's what we have. Women do. I don't. We have fur and hair. Now, I don't know, maybe the Anarcho-Caps think they have, scales or feathers? I don't know. Go out of focus here. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they think they're different. No, I'm sure they have fur and hair. And we are hominins, and there you have a whole list of them that died before us. One individual that I found out there on the internet says, why are we the only human species still alive today, whereas many of our early human ancestors, referring to the hominins, right, went extinct? And so this is the notion people have. Well, we did not go extinct because we're special. We're not even animals. Or we're a special type of animal that can avoid extinction. We're not like the other animals. We're not like them. Okay? That's their argument, essentially. They never specified exactly how, and I'm going to get into that in a second, but they consider animals different than us. And so maybe that's the wrong conclusion. Maybe the conclusion is something else. Maybe the last of a dynasty of rulers of the planet, like in our case, or the T-Rexes, or Dimetrodon in the Permian and so on. Maybe those die in a mass extinction, and not like all these other fellows died in a background extinction. Okay, so there are different interpretations why we are the only species of hominins left alive. And yeah, we also, with chimps and gorillas, form the groups known as hominids, okay? So we are among the last of the hominids. There's a few of those still left, but we are the last of the hominids. We have no one to mate with, no one to enrich our genetic diversity, which is almost gone today. Okay, so that's, in a nutshell, the story there. So are we different than the animals? Well, people say we are different because we have a brain. Oh, so we have a brain. Well, you know, animals have brains. I mean, mammals have, as far as I know, all of them have brains. Okay, so maybe we have a more sophisticated brain. You know, maybe we are able to think in abstract mode. Well, personally, I don't think that's an advantage. I mean, you have people who believe in God, others believe in spirits, others believe that the stars influence our thoughts or our behavior or whatever. Others believe in space-time and black holes. So I'm not sure that thinking in the abstract is an advantage of any kind. I'm sure a bear is more intelligent than some of these people. Okay? So that's one issue. But then they raise the issue of consciousness. Consciousness. Okay, so what do you mean consciousness? What is consciousness? And when you look it up, you know, you find out that there is no definition of the word consciousness. Okay, what you have here is a definition from the Wikipedia, and then below that you'll see the one that we had from Mrs. Ayn Rand, which I've been dealing with in the past couple of weeks. And they all pretty much match. Again, they have no idea what the word consciousness means, but they talk a lot about it. And it says sentience or awareness of internal or external existence, which is more or less what Ayn Rand said. But I like the comment that comes after. It says, despite centuries of analysis, definitions, explanations, and debates by philosophers and scientists, consciousness remains puzzling and controversial. Being at once the most familiar and most mysterious aspect of our lives, perhaps the only widely agreed notion about the topic is the intuition that it exists. So here people talk about a concept that exists. Consciousness, it's out there. When I die, my consciousness remains. The spirit of Bill, right, remains behind. So they have no idea what the word consciousness or conscious means. And I only ask the following. Does wildebeest that's being eaten by 4 or 5 lionesses, right? They just hunted him down. Is that wildebeest aware of pain? Is he conscious of pain? Is that wildebeest aware of the existence of the lionesses munching on him right that very moment? How is that different than when you have pain, in your sore thumb? You're aware of pain, aren't you? And so is the wildebeest. So how consciousness makes us different than animals, I have no idea, because I have no definition of consciousness that we can use consistently in science. So I'm going to relegate the word consciousness to religion. Anyone using it is talking religion. Okay? It's as simple as that. We have no definition of the word consciousness. And again, Ayn Rand was one of the ones who spent a lot of time on that word and wrote a lot about it. She had no idea what it was. Okay, but I like Mr. Charlie Darwin's notion better. Okay, and what did Charlie say? Well, he said there is no fundamental difference between man and the higher mammals in their mental faculties. All the differences are of degree, not of kind. Okay? Someone on the internet put a comment there saying these differences, these gradual changes make us extraordinary, meaning makes us a special kind of animal. We're kind of different than the animals. That's like saying that because the cheetah is the fastest, outruns any other animal, the cheetah's not an animal. Or the whale, king of bigness, of size, not an animal because he's so big. And here we are the king of brains or the king of intelligence or consciousness. Does that make us a non-animal? Does that make us not an animal? Does that take us away from the wild kingdom? And so this is the issue. The issue is whether any of those things are relevant. And here I went out there and made a list. You can object to the list or maybe improve on it, put some more things in there or take some out, okay? And here's a list of things that I picked up that make us different than the rest of the animal kingdom. We engage in trade because we store goods and have something to trade. Animals don't, okay? We have gone into space. We can change our environment. We produce our own food. We invent technology. We appreciate art. We are rational animals. Well, I'll take exception with some people out there. Pursuing knowledge for its own sake. We study other animals and write books about them. Physically, we are another primate, but our bigger brains are unusual, okay? So we have big brains, so what? Brain size, we seem to owe our complex reasoning abilities to it. Humans have altruism, more teamwork, cooperation, right, than chimps who need bigger bribes nudging. Okay, you need to nudge or bribe a chimp to a higher degree than a human, especially a kid, a baby, a toddler, to get him to do some things until he learns, how the real world works. We are certainly unique in the level of abstractness with which we can reason about others' mental states, unparalleled language skills. We link our scenario-building minds into larger networks of knowledge. We can share information at the touch of a button, and we also peer further back in time and further into the future than any other animal. Okay? So, I think that covers at least a lot of what people in general think that separates us from the rest of the animal kingdom. The first question is, does that make us not an animal? But then there's more pertinent issue that deals with what we're dealing here with extinction. And here are the $5 million questions, okay? And these are the ones that you should answer, okay? If you're going to, let's see if I get this thing in there. If you're going to challenge the theory. Can trade save you from death? Can technology compel city women, civilized women, to have 10 babies like in the days of the farms and the days of agriculture? Women used to have 8, 10 babies, no longer. Can consciousness help you avoid growing old? Can going into space prevent you from pooping or urinating? And can the ability to change our environment stop you from sleeping or eating? All what are called the vitals. What does the fact that we have differences, such as the ones mentioned a minute ago, have to do with death or with extinction? What does the fact that we have, assuming we concede, we have a higher consciousness, a higher intelligence level, we can see the future. What does that have to do with it, with your death? Does the fact that you can see the future better than a bear or a wolf, does that help you live longer or stay alive longer? Does it? Can you live forever because of that? Can you just keep thinking in advance and saying, therefore I can avoid death? So what does our differences, what do our differences between the rest of the animal kingdom have to do with death and with extinction? That's what you got to tie. See, if you're going to say, well, we're not animals. We're not like the animals in the past, like the dinosaurs or the amphibians or the archosaurs, right? Okay, so we're not like them. I guess we didn't have scales, we didn't have feathers, right? We didn't have fur, we have hair instead, right? So we're different, yeah. In what way does the fact that we have differences such as the ones mentioned before make us live longer, or make you as an individual live longer? Okay, these are the questions we gotta tie it in, because otherwise you're just stating and you're not making a point. What's your point? Yeah, we're different. So is a cheetah. Cheetah's different. It runs faster. So is the whale. It's bigger than anything else. Is that why it's not an animal? Is that why it's going to live forever or not live forever? What's it got to do? What does bigness or speed have to do with death or with extinction? Is the cheetah going to outrun extinction? Okay, so this takes us to the possible scenarios that I mentioned the other day, and these are out of the Wikipedia. It's people who give reasons for why man might become extinct. You have two choices. You either say that man does become extinct, or he doesn't, that he'll live forever. Some people believe that man will live forever. They're not off the hook. They have to tell us how man is going to avoid whatever killed the animals in the past. So you got no choice but to go back and say, well, this is how this animal died, and this is how we're going to avoid what killed him. That's what you got to do. And for those who believe that humans are going to become extinct someday, somehow, these are the proposals, okay? And the first few come from, or match, the ones we find in the Bible, the 4 horses of the apocalypse. And I call it horses, not horsemen, because another version is that there was only one horseman with different horses. Okay, so that's another version, just in case you're wondering. And yeah, we have pestilence, okay, in there. We have infighting, and we have conquest, okay. So you can see just by looking at the diseases and the nuclear warfare among humans, those match more or less what the Bible says. The conspicuous one that's missing is famine. The black horse. He's not in there, and we don't consider famine a possibility today. You won't find it in any theory. Okay, nobody will talk about famine. Humans dying of the fact that they have nothing to eat. Okay, nobody mentions that. Okay, we have added some. We have added catastrophes, all kinds. As you can see there's several of those. And then we added climate change, which is very popular today. Everybody talks about global warming, all that nonsense. And it's nonsense not because I don't believe in global warming or climate change. It's nonsense because it has nothing to do with extinction. That's why it's nonsense. It's when people bring that and say, oh, we're on the verge of becoming extinct because of global warming or climate change. That's when I reject that completely. Okay, so that's my personal attitude towards climate change. Habitat threats, never going to happen. Overpopulation exceeding the environment, that's a Malthusian argument, and I personally don't buy into it. I think capitalism can produce as many goods as you want. We can sustain 10, 15 billion people. It's just a matter of price, okay? Last one, I totally disagree. Population decline through a preference for fewer children. The problem is it's not a question of preference. This is not a free will issue, okay? These people think that women have a choice. The free willers, free willies, they say, oh, we have free will. Women have free will. They can choose to have a baby or not. No, they don't. They don't. Women do not. Women do not. Okay? And I'll prove it to you. Here's proof. Okay? You want proof and truth and evidence? Okay, let's give you proof and truth and evidence. Here's the the growth rate for humanity, okay? And by the mid-century or thereabouts, we're going to have zero population growth. Why are we going to have zero population growth? Because even though death rates will increase over time because we have an older population, birth rates are declining drastically since 1963. That was the last year where we had the highest level, 2.2, I think it was, about 2.3, and today we're at somewhere around 1, and that's going down to, I'm talking about the growth rates, and by the time we get to 2050, we're going to have a growth rate of 0. That means one person dies, one person is born. Okay, and I'm not sure about the births, and I think it's probably going to occur much sooner than that. Why is that the case? Well, because we have a transition from the country to the city. People are moving from the country to the cities. In the country, you can have 10 babies. In the cities, in an apartment, you can't have 10 babies. Period. We're done. That's the reason. So it's not that the Africans spit out children like, rabbits, and the Palestinians also because they have a high rate. No. Once they get into cities, every human stops having children. The issue is movement from the country to the cities. The agricultural corporations are buying out the lands, pushing out the individual farmers who can't compete against the big guys, and they come to the city with their families, and that transition is going on in all countries in the world, especially, we don't see this in the advanced countries as much, but in the underdeveloped nations, that's a revolution that's happening as we speak. The big corporations are buying out the lands, and the small farmers can't pay the rent, or they can't pay the loan or the mortgage or whatever, right? And so they're being kicked out. More or less like the enclosure movement of the 16th century. If you look that up, who was it? Thomas More said sheep are eating men. Because everybody was dedicating the what used to be public land. Up to that point, they were enclosing it with fences and putting sheep in there, which was a more lucrative business than planting potatoes. Okay? And it's the same thing, more or less. We have an enclosure movement now where the big corporations are taking over the land. They have these economies of scale in which they produce food and distribute it to the cities. And lots of governments are behind all that because, they're all friends. They're rich people with the government. And so they say, look, why don't you pass a law in this direction and that direction? And so, people are being kicked out of their lands. Anyways, we have a transition from the country to the city. When people come to the city, they no longer have children. You can't have children in a dense environment where you have no unemployment and no money, no disposable income. Not a good environment to grow children. And a lot of women choose, the free willies, they choose not to have babies. On an average, they don't have. So yeah, no, having babies is a thing of the past. It's animal behavior, and we're not animals. Okay, so and here's the population curve that I propose for humans, really for any species. This is the you heard of the S curve. The S curve is nonsense. They never finished that last part of the S. So I'll finish it for them. Here it is. I can get this thing up there. This is the population curve for any species. It starts out a long time ago, thousands of years ago. Births exceed deaths, okay? And there's lots of deaths, but there's births a little over the deaths, okay? You have a higher rate of birth than you have of deaths. It's a very slow progress, okay? You got a lot of bottlenecks, a lot of founders' effects in between. And by the time they become an old species, we get the births approximately equal to deaths. Births begin to equal deaths, and the final collapse is when births are fewer than deaths. The population pyramid overturns, and the species becomes extinct. And that's more or less where you see that in red. You are here. That's more or less where we are on the curve. And you can see how much time we probably have just by looking at the curve, as if economics would occur before that. Okay, I suspect that the economy is going to collapse much earlier than our population pyramid happens to overturn completely. Okay. Okay, so where does it take us? These are what I call the vitals. Again, let's start with those. And when I'm saying that, these are the things you need to stay alive. This is as an individual, okay? You need to breathe. You need to drink. You need to eat. They say breathing a couple minutes and you're dead if you don't breathe, right? If you don't drink, I think it's 5 days. And eating, I guess you can go maybe a month. I don't know, about 2 months. Certainly not a year, okay? So those are vitals. You need those. Otherwise you die. You become extinct. And all the cells in your body, after all, you know, I'm Bill, but I'm made of a bunch of cells, which are made of a bunch of molecules, which are made of a bunch of atoms. Now, the atoms and the molecules, they're not alive, so we don't have to worry about them. But the cells, yeah, they are alive. That's the unit that, that's the first unit that became alive on Earth. And, you know, they need to breathe, drink, and eat. If they don't, they die too. So you can take that collection of cells and say that we have a mass extinction when I die. All the cells die. The colonies that comprise me, they die. Okay? So we have a mass extinction. And these are the vitals. You need to whiz, you need to poop, right? You need to sleep. I don't know, maybe I missed a couple, possible. But these are things that kill you. Now we're talking about death. Okay? We're not talking about stuff that has nothing to do with death. These are things that have to do with death. So at least let's get some of the basics right. Okay? And here you have some of the maybes. Okay? These you can talk a lot about. You know, gravity. Do we need gravity? Do we need magnetism of the earth? Do you need to have someone love you, care for you, or whatever? Do you need company? I mean, maybe you can get a dog or whatever, you know. Antibodies to protect you from diseases. Do we need genetic diversity? And this is always on the individual basis. I'm talking about individuals here, right? Do you need earth under your feet? Well, if you're in space, you can still live, so you don't need really the earth under your feet. So all of these are maybes. You know, you can argue about them a long time. The ones on the left, you absolutely need. The ones on the right, well, you know, you can go into a lot of arguments and a lot of situations, okay? How about reproducing? Do we need to reproduce? Well, I would say the individual doesn't need to reproduce. Some individuals never reproduce in their entire lives, and they live out their lives to, you know, old age. Okay, so we don't need to reproduce. How about trade and commerce? How about this guy? Okay, do we need to trade? Well, I mean, hunter-gatherers didn't need to trade, and neither did subsistence farmers. So no, we don't need trade on an individual basis. You know, you can say today we might need it, but see what you're talking about. If you're going to include reproduction and trade, you're talking about the global population now disappearing. Now you're referring to, you know, if we don't reproduce our race, our species, then for sure we're going to go extinct. And if we don't trade today, if somehow God comes over here and waves his magic wand and somehow eliminates trade from our minds, so we no longer want to trade for whatever reason, well, I can bet you we're going to die. Because the only thing that keeps us going today is trade. Okay, so without trade, we're dead. Okay, now trade is a little worrisome because, see, trade does not really produce any good, any wealth, anything new. Okay, trade means that something existing is exchanged, but it doesn't produce anything new. Okay. Anyways, here's the extinction flowchart which I propose for those who want to challenge the theory. Okay. First, you need to tell me whether we are animals or not. In other words, you got to define what the word animal means. You can't keep saying, well, I'm not going to worry about the animals in the past because we're not animals, which is essentially your argument. Or we're not like them. You know, them is us, and us is them. We're all the same. We're animals. We have all the vitals. We have blood running through our veins, you know. We breathe. We sleep. We eat. So you can't say, well, we're not animals. And so we are part of that animal kingdom. If we're not, if you think we're not, then you got to specify, you know, what an animal is and what a human is with respect why we're not animals, okay? And what we are in the alternative. And if you say, well, these are our differences, you got to show that our differences are related to extinction and to death. You got to show me that. If you say trade, you got to show me why trade is going to make you live longer, or why you absolutely need trade or you're going to die tomorrow morning, like the vitals, okay? Then you got to answer the question, will man live forever? And some people say yes, some people say no. Okay, so those who say yes, they can't avoid the issue anyways. They have to tell me how we're going to avoid what killed the animals in the past. For this, you need to tell me how the animals in the past disappeared. And of course, people don't like to do that because they want to talk economics, they want to say how great we are, how smart we are, but they don't want to tell you how animals disappeared in the past. I do have a mechanism. I'm telling you, it was food. Food disappeared, then the animals disappeared. And the food is going to disappear on humans, and we're going to disappear for the same reason. So I do have a mechanism. We can't avoid running out of food. We run out of food because our economy collapses. And the only reason we produce food is because of trade, because of our economy. And when you look at it, money is an abstraction. It's becoming more abstract day by day. You know, it used to be we used to have food for we used to trade food like for carpentry and blacksmithing. You know, maybe you bought a sword for so many pounds of wheat or whatever, right? And then we went into gold. From there we went into paper money, and today we've gotten rid of all that. We are numbers in a bank account. It's all, you know, checking accounts and savings account and Bitcoin and whatever. It's all electronic money. That's how abstract our money has become. And some people don't see a problem with that. You know, our very lives depend on this abstraction. So, you know, I have a reason for saying that man cannot avoid starving, because all we need is for that system to collapse and no one produces food, no one delivers food, and we all die. So I do have a mechanism. The person who says we're going to avoid that has to have, I mean, you don't have to accept that theory. Of course not. I'm not saying that you have to accept the theory. I'm just asking you to understand it. And then you have to tell me, if you say that man's going to live forever, how he's going to avoid what all the other animals could not, because we are animals. And for those who say, no, man's not going to live forever, well, you better have a foolproof mechanism. You can't say, well, an asteroid's going to hit the Earth. What if it doesn't? Does that mean we live forever? And we're going to throw the nukes at each other. What if we don't? We live forever? So this is the issue. The issue, you have to have a foolproof, something we can't avoid no matter what. And the mechanism I'm proposing, I'm saying you can't avoid no matter what. Our economy will collapse. We cannot grow forever in great measure because we're not producing consumers. We're not producing children. And so at some point, the global economy will collapse, partly because we have nothing more to invent. There's nothing else that we need to make our lives more comfortable. So it's not like we're going to invent more gadgets in the future that will be sold and create new industries. No such monster. The industries we have right now are merging and becoming fewer and fewer. They have all these economies of scale in their attempt to cut down costs. And what that does is create more unemployment. And that unemployment is masked or covered or taken care of by the people who do work. You know, the government takes money from them and pays welfare, pays retirement. That's also unemployment. And any unemployed people who are without a job. And then you have all those people who seek jobs out there, you know, like selling drugs or whatever because they have no jobs. Or women who, you know, you look at YouTube, you find all these women just showing their bodies and making money, have millions of hits, and they receive money. I mean, the prostitute used to have to sleep with a guy. Today, the women don't have to sleep with a guy anymore. They just show their bodies and they collect. So those are the jobs we have today. You know, we have great jobs today. And people don't see a problem with that. You know, especially the free willies and the Anarcho-Capitalists, they don't see a problem with that. They think it's normal. They don't see any danger in that. Okay, anyways, let's see if I can finish up here. Let's go with this. These are my proposals, okay? First, I'm saying that, you know, we need to explain Extinction 101. Then you have to tell me if humans will ever die. If not, you have to tell me why not, why they can avoid, you know, what the animals could not avoid. And then finally, you have to tell me if you think that man's going to become extinct. You have to tell the crowd, you know, you have to give them a foolproof mechanism. Okay? That's in a nutshell. Now, here are my factors, okay, that I consider when I look at the collapse of the global economy, okay? And I'm sure the free willies are all going to disagree with me on 90% of these. I'm just telling you what I factor in when I talk about the extinction of man because of the collapse of the economy, okay? And here are the things that I look at. So I'm going to just run through them. I'm not going to explain them in any detail right now. We have population is the first topic that I look at. Population bottlenecks and founder effects. They reduce our genetic diversity, which they have over the years. Okay, that leads to genetic disorders. The period of colonization is over. We don't do any more. We don't conquer any territory. That's over with. Okay, we've conquered the entire earth essentially. We're not going to found any new cities. There's this transition from the country to the city going on right now where the cities are becoming mega cities and the country is becoming depleted, taken over by the agricultural corporations which feed the cities. The cities are becoming overcrowded. That creates mental disorders of all kinds. The family type changes. Okay, women have fewer babies and population pyramid overturns. Okay, that's my perspective there, and I just want to show how the family type has changed over the years with respect to the mode of production. Most of this is Marxist theory, okay? And the hunter-gatherers, they had group sex, agricultural phase, where we had slaves and also later on serfs. That was a patriarchy type of arrangement. You had one wife, many slaves. The guy probably slept with half of them. You know, then we went to the nuclear family, mom and pop and the children. And today we have the lone bachelor, the divorcee, the single guy, right? And sex is today really more recreational. It's not for reproduction, okay? So that's in a nutshell what has happened over the years as far as I'm concerned. Those are the things I look at when I look at population. How about factor number 2? Okay, and again, you don't have to agree with any of these. I'm just saying what I look at, okay? And that are going to cause the economic collapse. Factor number 2, unemployment. We have the number of consumers drop because we're not producing consumers. We're not producing a new generation of consumers. Demand declines. Corporations don't sell. They can't create new products because there are no new products that we need. Like in the past, we needed telephone, we needed airplanes, we needed cars. We don't need any of that anymore. We got them. We can't reinvent the wheel. Okay. So there's massive layoffs. Services is an abstract economy. It's unreal. There's no such thing as services. It's a promise. I call it mass unemployment. Wealth is only material things. You know, imagine you're God or you're a Martian. You come to Earth and you look at the Earth from above. Well, you see a big city with all these skyscrapers. And then you see a little village with all these, you know, huts. And you look at these two, do you think you can tell which one has more wealth just by looking at those two pictures? And the answer is yes, of course, because those are material things. Did you see any services in there? No, services are promises, are abstract things. There is no such thing as service. Even when you cut somebody's hair or cut his lawn, you know, mow the lawn, you're not producing anything really. You're not producing anything. So service is a BS economy, and 85% of the economy of like the United States, of Europe, and Japan, that's services. And all the other countries are imitating that. You know, the trade and commerce do not produce wealth, and we have transition from manufacturing to services to unemployment. That's the mode of production now. We have more and more unemployment, which implies also, you know, welfare, retirement, etc. Okay, and then you have underdeveloped nations copy the service model of the advanced nations. Everybody wants to be, you know, this leisure society where you have you know, all services, tourism, all beautiful things, and nobody produces any wealth. There's no increase in wealth. In material things. That's what wealth is. Okay, and let's see. We go from there to another aspect, and that's what these are things I look at. Here are the entitlements. Okay, and you know, in order to keep the peace, governments have to institute this. It's like they have no other choice. And you know, the free willies say, and the anarcho-caps say, well, we should stop helping all these people, you know, let them get on their feet all by themselves. Well, but no government on earth does that. So that has to make you stop and think whether we can do without government and whether government can do such a thing. I mean, the politicians are self-interested and they want to be re-elected. And aside from that, they don't want a revolution. They don't want a civil war. So they have to do these things. They have to give money to the poor to keep them down, to keep them quiet. The reason we have no problems here in Europe is that, you know, everybody gets his money no matter what. If you go to the other countries like in Africa and South America and some in Asia, they have revolutions and civil wars and all these kinds of problems, stealing, etc. Why? Because they don't get any money from the government. The guy's unemployed. He's got nothing to live with. He's a little unhappy. Okay, so yeah, I don't know. The free willies, they fix every problem very easy, but I personally don't agree with that. Okay. Anyways, unemployment rises, welfare rises, population ages, and that means that we have more retirees. Okay. Real cost increases. Government prints more money to cover the holes. Government borrows and incurs debt. All governments are indebted today. Okay. And interest becomes an ever-growing percentage of GDP. So these are, in general, things that I look at. Okay, you don't have to agree with them. I'm not asking you to agree. I'm saying this is what I look at. Okay, and the next one is money. Okay, another aspect I look at. Okay, and here it is. We have devaluation of the currency. Almost every country has that to a large extent as they match their currency against others in order to be able to export and import, etc. Real wages fall, disposable income falls, demand falls further. Money gradually loses its value, and governments default on international loans. In fact, Argentina right now, my country, you know, has serious problems. They not only are devaluing the coin, but they're wondering how they're going to pay the International Monetary Fund. So, you know, you got to be careful with them. Find out how they're going to do it. And one suggestion I always do, because people say, money, what do you mean money is going to disappear? What do you mean we're not going to believe in money? What do you mean we're going to become atheists in money? And here's the scenario. You know, here's this guy walking into your shop in Michigan, right? And he says, Joe, how much does that hat cost? That's $10. Okay, I'll buy it, but I'll pay you with Argentine pesos. And Joe says, are you crazy? I don't accept Argentine pesos. What do you mean? It's money. It's legal tender. It's backed by the Argentine government. Well, all I can tell you, don't accept Argentine pesos, okay? That's a Nigerian scam, okay? Nigerians created that scam because Argentina beats them at soccer every time. And so they use Argentine money to pay for things. Don't accept Argentine money, okay? So for all those people who think that money is money is money, no, money is not money. You don't accept Argentine money. Please don't, okay? It's fake money anyways. Okay, and then the last aspect I look at is this one, and which is unrest, okay? And what happens is, because of countries, not everybody can be rich, not everybody can have a decent life out there, and governments will continue paying whatever they can to keep people at peace. Well, you're going to have massive strikes, you're going to have revolutions, war, you're going to have crime, and you're going to have civil war. So I don't think you can avoid any of these things. And again, I'm not asking you to agree with all my things that I look at. You know, when I look at the collapse of the economy, I'm just saying that all these things are negative. All these things drive us to the destruction of our economy, our global economy, our artificial economy, as I call it, this trade thing that we invented. And trade will fall. Trade, as far as I'm concerned, will disappear. It can't continue forever. And here's the big picture. I showed it last time. I'm going to show it one more time, and that's this one. That we were hunter-gatherers during over maybe 200,000 years. For the last 10,000 years, we went into farming, and these are just ballpark numbers. About 200 to 300 years ago, we went into manufacturing industry in some parts of the world. About 50 years ago, we went into services, and that's already an unemployment society as far as I'm concerned, an unemployment mode of production. We're not producing anything real, okay? And we also have higher unemployment, or unemployment is going to be growing as we become more and more efficient, okay? So I don't think we can avoid that. And so what's the end result of all that? Well, here's, if you look at that same history, here it is in pictures. We started out as hunter-gatherers, killing maybe some animal out there in the middle of nowhere. We went into agriculture, then we went into manufacturing, from there to services. From there we go to unemployment, from there we return to hunter-gathering, but this time we go into hunter-gathering in the asphalt jungle. We start killing each other. We do cannibalism. That's how humans will end, as far as Bill Gates is concerned. Okay? Okay. So I'm sure I upset at least half of the free willies out there, but that's how I think. I think that we're going to die exactly like the dinosaurs, like the archosaurs, like the synapses, like the amphibians. We're going to die exactly like them, because we can't avoid what they couldn't avoid, which is the overturning of the ecological pyramid, the many chasing the few. We're going to run out of food because no one's going to plant food. Today we like someone said, and I've included there in the list, we are an animal that can plant food and create our own food. We do that, and but we do this for money, for economic gain, for personal reasons. When that personal reason disappears, when money disappears, when money is no more, when you no longer accept Argentine pesos, well, at that point you don't have an incentive to produce something for someone else or deliver it to the cities. And people cannot imagine that, especially the free willies and narco-caps. They say, well, that's impossible. They cannot even imagine such a world because they were born in Disneyland. And so they think Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck are for real. Anyways, that's my take. I'm going to continue on Wednesday with this. Let's see if I can answer some questions, but I doubt it because I'm out of time. But let's see if there's anything worth it. It's all about making movies. The greatest scientists were, okay, Bill is a Marxist. Okay. Eating is a personal reason. Okay. Okay, I'll have to look at some of these. I'll have to look at some of these issues next time. I don't think we have time today. But all I'm saying, if you want to challenge the theory again is the overturning of the ecological pyramid. Okay, that's the theory. What does that mean? It means that all the animals in the past that died in a mass extinction, not a background extinction, a mass extinction, died because their ecological pyramid overturned. We had the many chasing the few. We have the more carnivores chasing fewer herbivores, which chased fewer plants of the type that they ate. Now, some people ask the question, well, hold it, Bill, why did the dinosaurs, when the herbivores died, they could have eaten something else? And the answer is no, they can't eat something else because there is nothing else big to feed a T-Rex. I mean, when the Triceratops disappear, or the hadrosaurs, or the ankylosaurs, when these other animals that T-Rex ate disappeared, you can't go in there eating potato chips, mammals, little mice. That's like you trying to say, well, I don't eat meat anymore, I don't eat lettuce anymore because there's none there, so I'm going to eat ants. Okay, so you eat ants. How easy is it to eat ants? Well, first of all, you have hands to eat ants, but see, the dinosaurs could not do that. They didn't have the versatility in their movements to go in there and look for little mice, mammals, to eat those and not fill their stomachs anyways. So no, you can't switch overnight. Partly because you've been used to eating the same type of animals for millions of years. You cannot suddenly switch your diet, even as a carnivore, assuming there were big enough animals for you to eat. And that occurs also for the archosaurs. That occurred for the synapsids of the Permian and the amphibians. So no, the mass extinction ends with the overturning of the ecological pyramid. And I'm saying that humans cannot avoid that either. Why? Because our economy, the only thing that produces food, because we are an animal that produces its own food, that's going to disappear. What's going to crash is the global economy, and when that crashes, money is no more. Because money is no more, you will not accept Argentine pesos anymore, okay? And when that happens, you don't produce, you have no incentive to produce for someone else. That's the theory. That's what you got to challenge, okay? And if you want to challenge it, don't talk to me about humans. Start with the animals. Don't tell me humans are not animals and therefore I don't need to address that issue. You got to start with Extinction 101. How did the animals in the past die? We'll see you on Wednesday. And Wednesday, that means Merry Christmas for those of you who are religious. Okay? We'll see you then. Bye-bye.